All right, so Super Bowl day, right? Hopefully, you're excited about the big game. Being from New England, I'm kind of rooting for Tom Brady and Tampa Bay. I know that's heresy for the Patriots, but you know what? It's Tom Brady. I've been a longtime fan. I want to see him do pretty well. Mostly these days, I just root for good games to watch. Kind of like Luca and Steph going head to head last night with the what they did with the Mavericks and the Golden State Warriors. 99 points between two players. Um, Unfortunately, only people watching on TV. Nobody actually in the arena to watch that. But yeah, these days I root for the athletes as much as the teams. I just enjoy seeing people take it to the next level. What I'm doing today, I had a couple recent projects that I thought I would share. Might be of interest to some folks. And if it's not of interest to you, no worries. Go root for Tom or whoever your favorite athlete is today. But in the meantime, I had a couple things that I just wanted to share and get out there. Again, might be useful. They're from recent projects, so I thought you guys would be interested. All right, so welcome everyone. My name's Tobin, and I've been putting this together. This is a training that I put together for my paid clients, but I'm actually putting it out there for free because the information is that good, that valuable, will make enough of an impact that I want more people to see it. So my clients will get it, but I'm putting it here, and we'll be sharing it in a couple other places. This is actually part one of three, so I'm calling it the Game Changer series. This first one is sort of high level strategy, and then the next two will talk about specific tools. In fact, the next video will talk about how to get almost a near 100% response rate on your bookings. And that shocked me too. I'm still getting 100%. I don't expect it to stay that high, but 3 to 4 times higher response on opens of your emails. Like, we're using a tool, and I'm going to show the behind the scenes how we're able to do that. So that's part two. But let's get into part one because I want to keep this nice and short and get some useful information in front of you. So again, the topic here is why aren't more people clicking on my stuff, my offers? That's what we're going to cover here. And we're going to move quickly through a series of slides that I created for you. So the information that I'm sharing is specifically called the Fogg behavior model. And if you guys aren't familiar, this is BJ Fogg. BJ, and you can find out more information at bjfogg.com. He's a professor at Stanford, well known for his studies in behavioral design, specifically focusing on how humans interact with computers, right? So that's why we're talking about clicking, people paying attention online. But these key lessons, this is psychology. This is not about technology. It's about the psychology behind it. And so these key lessons apply to all human behavior now, okay? And at the end of this, you're going to get a simple formula that I find is actually going to change, at least for me, it's going to change how you look at the world, how you think about the work that you may be doing online. Like, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, once you see this, you're never going to go back. It's always going to sort of influence the decisions that you make and ultimately make you more effective. So that's why I wanted to get this in front of as many people. Once I learned this, I knew more people needed to be exposed to it as well. But again, giving credit to BJ Fogg, wanted to make sure we get that done right up front. All right, so next. Words of wisdom, specifically to give him credit. If we know why a behavior is occurring, then we can trigger that behavior in a different way and get the results that we're seeking, that we want, that impact that we want to make in the world. If you keep doing the same thing that you've always done, you're going to get more of those results, right? So we know that. We don't want to bang our head against the wall and just keep smashing the button in the same way. Let's do something a little bit different. And that means taking a step back and asking these questions about why a behavior is occurring and making some slight adjustments. That is what this Fogg behavior model is all about, right? Pushing a different or a new button and getting better results. So here's the actual model. This is the sort of academic high-level overview now, okay? And the Fogg behavior model is actually a formula that you can see here. So it is behavior, which is, that's the action that we want people to take, clicking on something, engaging with an offer that we put out there, subscribing to something, whatever that behavior is that you want. is the result of their motivation, their ability, and the trigger or the call to action that brought them to that place. So again, a formula is kind of academic, but we've got a diagram on the right side, and you can basically see the X and the Y axis. And so you have low motivation. You can think of this on a scale from 1 to 10. So low motivation is like a 1. High motivation would be a 10. And on the y-axis, something that feels hard to do would be a 1. And easy to do, the ease of doing it, would be a 10 on the bottom. So as you start to think about engaging with people, if you've got someone who's a 1 and a 1, so they're feeling very low motivated and they feel like it's hard to do, those triggers are going to fail no matter what you're saying to people, right? Those are the two factors that are going to decide that. So no matter what the trigger is, you're not going to get the results that you want if they have low motivation and it's hard to do. On the flip side, we often see examples. So let me use the example of someone that puts like a work from home or some kind of increase your revenue opportunity in front. Now, all of us, or most of us, I should say, feel very motivated to bring more income in. If you can earn more money, that feels great. People are very motivated for that. But we often don't feel like we have the ability to do it. Maybe we don't have the confidence. Maybe we're skeptical. And so we're very high on motivation, but we're feeling it's hard to do. In fact, I think BJ Fogg uses ability. I think confidence is maybe a better description for that bottom y-axis, because a lot of times, whether we think it's our confidence in being able to get those results. So in that case, we have a low confidence or ability score, and so the trigger, again, is not effective and it fails. The person is not getting the behavior out of us that they want. On the flip side, if you see someone that invites you to a webinar, for example, and I bet a lot of you out there have registered for a webinar before, your ability to fill in the fields and register for a webinar, your confidence that you know what you're doing and you can do that and register successfully is very high. You've done it a million times probably. But your motivation may be low because you're thinking, why do I want to do this? Is this information really worth it? And again, the triggers or the call to action for that type of activity would fail because it doesn't have this right combination between motivation and ability. That is the sort of high-level overview of the Fogg behavior model. Now let's talk about what this means to you. All right, so actually I want to break it down a little bit more. So the behavior defines the actions that we want from the audience to take. It might be someone clicking, buying, engaging in some way. Motivation is the degree to which a person already knows how much they want the value proposition, right? Where do they stand before you even try to put a message in front of them that may lift their perceived motivation or their perceived ability. Ability, which I think is better defined as confidence, is often the most overlooked. It's the ability of a person to describe the level of confidence they have to get the promised results. So you can make the best promise, but if they're skeptical and they don't believe it, they're going to be low on that ability score. And lastly, the trigger is it could be a button on your website, a notification on social media. It's the reminder, it's the thing that you put in front of someone that tells them now is the time, all right, so that they know that. Okay, a couple more words that I want to share with you here. People resist attempts at boosting motivation, but we all naturally love simplicity. And this is very similar. You may have heard before the phrase, people hate being sold, but they love to buy. And this is really like an extension of that, right? So if you're trying to boost the motivation, which is what most marketers are doing, right? They're just trying to push and push and push and boost up the motivation. And human beings are naturally resistant to that. But we all love things that are easy to do, that come naturally. And so let's take advantage of that, right? Let's start to use this model in a way that will push the triggers into the successful realm, which is, above and to the right of that line that we looked at before. Your goal is really to start with the bottom left, where the circle is. That's where you put something out. You put a social media post out there. You don't get the result you're looking for. You hear crickets, right? Maybe a couple likes, maybe a couple comments, but basically people are ignoring you. Whereas when you utilize this Fogg behavior model, when you think about it from this frame of reference, you can start to shift your messaging so you put killer offers. And that's how you get people from from here, the crickets, all the way up to the upper right, where they're taking action. You're making the impact that you want on the world. There are 3 types of triggers that you can pay attention to. And these are also part of Fogg's work. There are spark triggers, facilitator triggers, and signal triggers. And it's important for you to understand the difference. A spark trigger is going to go specifically to enhancing or increasing motivation. You can think of it like a spark lights the fire under someone. It tells them why they should want this. Again, in the case of a webinar, people know how to register, but do they actually want to spend the time with the webinar? That would require a spark trigger to enhance their motivation. Marketers quite often underutilize the facilitator triggers, and that's where we actually help them, like, this is how I'll help you get this done. This is how I'll make it easier for you. This is how it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Or maybe even showing testimonials of other people who have been able to get the results. So we facilitate their belief in themselves. And lastly, a signal trigger is all about timing. It's that call to action. And people are going to respond when we already know that we have sufficient motivation and ability. If you're showing signal triggers in front of someone and they don't have those, then you become like that annoying little kid who keeps tapping someone on the shoulder over and over again, right? And you just want them to stop because the notification or the reminder or the trigger is not enough by itself. It requires this interplay between motivation and ability. I want to go back to that point about social proof. When we see people lined up, queued up outside a store or a restaurant, right? That's a signal to us that there's value inside. It's got a full parking lot. There's no parking spaces. We pay attention to that. As human beings, we gravitate toward where the action is. No one wants to stop and eat at the restaurant that has the empty parking lot, right? We want what's exclusive. We want what is hard to get. When we see results that other people get, that makes it look easy. We can say, this is as simple as 1, 2, 3. Just do these following 3 steps, and you can get these same results. Or maybe we see other people. We see someone else who got the results, and we think to ourselves, hey, I could do that too. We see ourselves in others. So social proof is a really key component. This is why you may have heard other people say you need testimonials, you need social proof. This is the psychology of why it's actually working, because it is addressing that bottom y-axis and building the confidence of people. They already have the motivation. They don't believe in themselves. They don't believe in their ability to get it done. And social proof addresses that missing gap. This is what a lot of marketing folks are not thinking about when they're putting together their messaging. They just hammer away on motivation. It is all about delivering the right message at the right time, right? Right message at the right time. That's how you get people to take action. Otherwise, it falls on deaf ears. You've had that experience. I've had the same thing. And the way to avoid that, again, is to pay attention to this matrix of motivation and ability, and sort of think about the people that you're communicating with. Here are some, let's drill down a little bit more specifically to give you some examples. So if you want to increase motivation, you can create headlines or call to actions that talk about pleasure, talk about pain, talk about hope or fear, acceptance and rejection. You may have heard all of these items before because it references the crocodile brain, the croc brain, like our for very base level of human motivations. Those are the things that are going to increase motivation. And again, that's where marketers tend to spend most of their time. And that's why some marketing messages fall flat, because they're only dealing with that side. When there's a gap on the ability side, that's where you need to address with simplicity factors. So you can talk about time, minimizing the time, minimizing the money, minimizing effort. Maybe they have a lack of expertise. And so you have a facilitator, you have an expert that's going to guide them and get them there. Brain cycles is how hard they have to think or learn. New habits. No one likes to add new habits. It's a lot of work on our part. Or lastly, there's the psychology of just looking weird, doing something different. People are going to initially be resistant to that. So you've got to, again, the social proof kind of addresses that. People can see, oh, other people have done this and they've gotten results. Maybe I can do that as well. Let's make this information actionable for you, okay? Pick a behavior that you want to instigate, get more results from. And I want you to think about one person to start. Focus on one person. And that's really key because you are going to plot that person on the X and Y axis. Are they a 5? Are they a 10? Where do they stand on their motivation, your perception of their motivation, and their ability or confidence in getting it done? And once you know where they are, now you can write a trigger. Trigger means maybe a headline, a call to action, the messages, maybe your social media posts, however you're communicating with them, could be an email, but you're going to write something that is going to specifically address those gaps, right? We all have a different, like a personality profile of what we believe our confidence, our how much money, how much time we have. We're all a little bit different there. So you want to think about that individual and write messages that will shift them, particularly on the bottom Y-axis. Your marketing is going to live and die on this Fogg behavior model. And that's from me. This is not from BJ Fogg. I don't know if he said that or not, but I believe this. Once I learned this, it has, again, changed. The toothpaste is out of the tube, and I will never look at a message, anything that I do with a landing page, with on LinkedIn, on email, I'll never look at it the same without thinking about where people fall on this Fogg behavior model. And once you know that, you can start to make adjustments that make sense and ultimately get the results that you're looking for, right? If it's not working, you'll know why and you'll know what to do about it. That is worth its weight in gold. And that's why I'm leading with this little brief training for the 3-part Game Changers. I wanted you guys to see this and know so you would be able to do the same thing. Here's a little bit of background info because I know some of the folks that will see this won't know who I am. There's 3 things you should know about me. 1, you can learn more at tobinslavin.com. That's my personal website. My signature program is called Conversations at Scale. It's specifically focused on creating more conversations and with the right people. We do that on LinkedIn. We do that on email, but it's really the psychology, not the technology, that makes that happen.
Hey everyone, it's Mark Mawhinney here, and I have with me Tobin Slavin. Tobin, can you hear me?
I can. Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm excited to be sharing this.
Yes, and I am glad to have everyone here. I know it's Friday, late in the day, the weekend's coming up, but that shows that everyone's serious. So before we kick off, Tobin, I just want to make sure everyone can hear us okay. If you guys can pop a quick note in the chat box, and I will be monitoring the chat box while Tobin's presenting, but if you could let us know that you hear us loud and clear, we would appreciate it. And there we go. I see a bunch of people in here. Hal, H.M., nice to see you in Ontario. Martina, Leslie, Christine, and lots of folks that I recognize. Gloria, Maureen from Moncton, my hometown. I believe that's Maureen. And yes, they can hear us, so we're all good. So we're going to kick it off, guys. I like to get started right away. As mentioned, I have with me Tobin Slavin, and today he's going to be showing you how you can get more results from LinkedIn. And I've gotten to know Tobin really well here, but I didn't know him up until the last few months. And he, what he's going to be showing you today, he utilized that with me to build a relationship, and he did it the right way. It wasn't spammy or salesy or anything like that. He just approached me the right way, and I'm glad that he did. So Tobin's going to be sharing some great stuff. As I said, I'm going to be watching the chat box. If you have any questions, please pop them in there, because he'll be sticking around for Q&A at the end, or I might even jump in and interject if there's something I think should be addressed right away. So without further ado, Tobin, I am going to turn it over to you.
Well, I appreciate that, Mark. And I also appreciate you saying that, because I have a lot of respect for what you built with Natural Born Coaches and the coaching jungle. So to hear those words from you, that means a lot to me. Folks, I'm going to jump right into it. I do a lot of webinars myself too. I mean, watching webinars so that I can learn new ideas. And one thing you're not going to hear from me today is a whole lot of information about who I am and what I do. If you're interested in that, I'm happy to share it, but I don't have slides about it. I'm not going to give you my backstory, because honestly, I don't think it matters until I help you, until I share something useful or interesting or entertaining with you guys. And what I'm bringing today, I don't know where you are in the process, to be very honest. Like I don't know a whole lot about all the folks that have registered yet. I'd love to get to know you. We'll talk about how we could do that later on. But what I did bring was, if you're a beginner or you're sort of new to LinkedIn, you haven't been using it, I've got some ideas for you. If you're an intermediate, you're using it occasionally, but you'd like better results, I've got a different set of ideas that will be more appropriate for you. And lastly, if you're an advanced user, if you're over there every day, I think I've got some things that will make you look at LinkedIn differently. So again, I'm going to try to bring something for everyone, and let's dive into it. I want to be respectful of your time. So the first thing I want to share with you guys, everyone here is in some shape or form a trusted advisor. That usually means sharing like a signature program. So that's who this is for. If you're in the e-commerce space, I don't know your business as well. I tend to work with coaches, consultants, expert-based businesses. So a lot of the examples that I'm going to be sharing are along those lines. How it applies to, for example, e-commerce or B2C markets might be slightly different. So just wanted to give you that awareness up front. Why we're talking today is I think we all agree that we've seen a shift recently in the last 6 to 8 weeks with what's going on around the world. And usually people say, well, winter is coming. Well, it's here, folks. And I don't mean the season. I mean, we've seen a dramatic change in our business and our selling environment. So I'm going to address, what I'm sharing with you. This is the work that I do day to day, and I want to share with you what we're doing. I think it's pretty cutting edge because it's actually getting great results in this market, like in the last few weeks. It's people are enrolling into programs. This works. And so I wanted you to know it's very relevant to the current. This is not a slide deck that I put together, a year ago, and I recycled for this. Part of that, one of the reasons why this works so well is because the uncertainty for folks is at an all-time high. None of us really know what's coming in the next 6 to 9 months, even a year out. So being able to address that in a respectful way that builds relationships is at the base of what we're going to be talking about. And I'll give you actual examples of how we're doing that. But I just want you to understand from a high conceptual level, that's really important, that we recognize where people are in their world right now. And they're probably feeling uncertain. Maybe they're concerned about lines of business drying up and not being available to them anymore. Maybe it's been a fundamental shift and they're taking new programs online that weren't before because they were speaking from stages or doing more group events. So that uncertainty is high. We've got the right antidote to that, and I'll be sharing, why that's important. And lastly, I say we're all back in startup mode. You may have been in your business for 20 or 30 years, getting great results for your clients. In that sense, I'm not saying you're a startup, but all the things that we know about how to make our businesses go, the way we get clients, the client getting process, as I like to call it, we kind of have to test all those assumptions again. I was in a client meeting a week or so ago, and the client had a flow chart, and they had marked out certain parts of the flow chart with a little tag that said proven, meaning that they had done it, they got the results, they knew it was working for them, and they kind of marked that off and saying, let's focus on testing other parts of our business. Well, all those results are out the window right now because it is a new environment, a new relationship building and selling environment. So being able to test in that environment and honestly being able to test and learn more quickly, accelerating that learning process, that is the competitive advantage. And I'm going to circle back to that at the end of the webinar today because I think it's a really important point. So a couple things that I'm going to set up for you. The first thing we're going to talk about is what I call the 4 gears of marketing. And the reason I talk about this is it changed my world because I was a content marketing or social media agency about a dozen years ago. I actually had a small team of 5 people. We were doing content marketing for ourselves and for our clients. And while I know that world really well, I also know that one of the things that comes from doing, and probably a lot of you guys are doing this too, like what we're doing right now, a webinar, sharing information, that's content marketing. But you need something you can bank on. You need something that's going to be consistent, predictable, and reliable. And one of the downsides of content marketing, look, we all know that when someone consumes your content, they show up, they're more informed, they end up being better clients for you. The problem is we don't know when they're going to show up. right? We can't bank on that because it's like being Johnny Appleseed. We're spreading our seeds all over the country. They're going to grow trees and they're going to bear fruit. We just don't know how long it's going to be before that person shows up. So for me, and what I'm going to share with you in a moment, content marketing is part of the picture, but it's not where we start. And that's one of my, I would say, points of differentiation with some of my peers out there, because a lot of folks are really focused on this piece. I'm not against it. I'm all for the right strategy at the right time. But if you use the right strategy at the wrong time, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. And you probably have been feeling frustrated and you don't know why it's working for you. The next area is referrals. Like, we all love getting referrals. I love it. I'm sure you do too. A referral is a sign that you've been doing great work. It's a pat on the back. The fact that someone is willing to refer other business to you is a credit to the work that you've been doing for them. But again, not predictable, not reliable. You can build a system for it, but you don't always know when these referrals are going to show up. Again, it's a higher order of prospect when they enter your world, because someone has edified you and said things about you that makes them interested and makes those conversations easier. But we're going to talk about how we can actually be more proactive and take control of this situation, put our hands on the wheel, so to speak. And then lastly, and this is the villain that I'm going to throw the rocks at for a moment. How do you get to ROI? Everyone out there is talking about marketing funnels. Like, that is the hot, trendy buzzword. There's some big companies that are selling tools around this space. I've done this myself. I've built marketing funnels. I've done paid traffic, and I came up with nothing on the other end. Now, I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but it's probably the most disheartening thing that happens in the online world. When you when you do everything right, you follow the plan, but you're getting negative ROI, meaning because everyone's selling this dream. Look, spend $1, you're going to get 2 back. And every person that I know would say, yeah, let's do that all day long. Let's just keep cycling through that. The problem is when you're spending $2 and you're getting 50 cents back. It's a kick in the pants. And again, part of the problem is because this, in the world that I'm going to show you in a moment, marketing funnels come later in the process. It's the right strategy, but it has to be at the right time to fully realize it. So let me show you, I have a graphic that I think will help clear this all up. So these are the 4 gears of marketing, numbered by first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear. And we're going to start at the end, because that's where the funnels and the automations, this is the ability to deliver that one-to-many solution. Right now, we are doing a 4th gear strategy because we're on a webinar. It's one person talking right now. We'll change that at the end, I promise. We'll get some Q&A in here. But right now, it's one person sharing information with many people. So this is a 4th gear strategy. And the goal is to get more clicks, right? To build your audience, to talk to a lot of people with a message that is going to be influential and impact their lives, transform their lives. 4th gear for us is like cruising down the interstate. Life is great. You got the top down, the wind is blowing, you're cruising 80 miles an hour, but you can't get out of the parking lot in 4th gear. And what I'm going to show you is how we actually drive our car like a race car so we can go out of the parking lot, down the street, up the on-ramp, and get onto the freeway and get into 4th gear where life is really good. 3rd gear is your referral circle. This is where you actually work with collaborators, champions, people who have the ear and the trust of the audience that you want to work with. In this case, it's Mark. Mark has done a phenomenal job building this amazing community of coaches, the Coaching Jungle specifically, where people are coming in and sharing useful information. Like, it's brilliant. He is a community builder. And because of that, because of my reaching out to Mark, we're able to do what we're doing today. And the goal here is to get more champions that can introduce you to the people you should be talking to, right? Great strategy, but again, you're not going to get out of the parking lot in 3rd gear. It will get you to the freeway, like it revs the engine up into 4th gear. Once you have a really good referral strategy in place, it's going to make that funnel work really well. But it's the first 2 gears that are going to set this up more than anything else. The 2nd gear is the content marketing that I talked about a moment ago. That's that ability to get clients coming to you. It's also called inbound marketing. Some people will refer to it as, or attraction marketing. The goal is to get more visibility I'm going to give you a slightly different twist on this in a moment, because I think a lot of people are looking at their content saying, if I create a ton of content and I put it out everywhere, people will find me and they will come to me. Like, that's literally the playbook that a lot of people run, but it doesn't feel good. It didn't feel good to me. And the reason why is I felt like a hamster on a hamster wheel. Like, I could not keep up and I could not create enough content. Now, with the process that we do, what I'll show you in a moment, I probably do 20% of the content creation, but I'm getting 80% of the results from it. And the reason why is the content that we're creating is driven out of first gear. That's why the first gear is the big gear here. It's setting everything else up. And that is conversational outreach. And the goal here is to get more conversations. And this matters because when we have conversations, like real dialogue with people, when we do that, all of a sudden we get to hear, like, what do they actually care about? And they'll use phrases that we never even thought of. If we go to market with what we think is the best solution, most often we're a little bit off, because if you're like me, you get a little nerdy about the topics that you care about, the work that you do. And so you look at it through the lens of your experience, as your expertise. You see it from all those years that you put in there, and the impact that you know you can make, and you don't see it with beginner's eyes. But when you go out and talk to your people, they'll actually use phrases, and it's like, oh my God, that's the perfect way to describe what we're doing here. And they will literally write your headlines. They will write your sales letters for you. And when you do that, all of a sudden the content marketing works better. The second gear, right? You've revved up the engine in first gear. All of a sudden the content marketing is much more impactful because you actually answer questions that they asked you directly. Like, you didn't guess at what the questions were, but they told you, I really need to understand this. You go answer that question, and all of a sudden people flock to that content because it came out of a conversation. The referral partners want to work with you because they see the other two gears working, and they see people are paying attention, that you have real attention and engagement. And ultimately, all this marketing machine, when you start using those kind of headlines, your funnels and your automation works better too. And that's how you get a positive ROI. So none of these are wrong strategies. It's most often a wrong order, and people are trying to build the funnels and automation first, and they don't realize they could set it up for themselves more easily. Does that make sense for folks so far? Those are the 4 gears of marketing. And I wanted to start there. And the reason why is because it gives us sort of a foundation. Now, if you're interested in just this part, like this sort of conceptual understanding, this is the methodology that I use. I'm a partner at SalesMap. That's the company that I work with. I have 3 other partners. Our focus in SalesMap is actually bringing sales teams, building sales teams for expert-based businesses. And so we use that same methodology. At the end of the call today, the end of the webinar, I'm actually going to share with you a side project that I'm doing, a workshop that's coming up next week that is for businesses that aren't ready for that sales team process, right? So we've got a couple things going on, but in both cases, I'm using the 4 gears of marketing, because this, you know, having been in the digital marketing space for over 15 years now, this is what changed the game for me, was understanding why things were breaking and not working the way the experts promised when I thought I was doing everything right. I had the right strategy. I was trying to execute it at the wrong time. And I didn't have the earlier gears. The engine was not revved up. I was stalling my car in the parking lot, trying to drive out of there in second, third, and fourth gear. The next thing I'm going to share with you is what I call doing LinkedIn differently. And I've got 5, they're mistakes, they're pitfalls. Listen, I'm not casting stones at anyone here, because I've made all of these mistakes at different times, sometimes worse than others. I'll own that. But I think I've learned from some of these mistakes, and they're definitely, I mean, this is what is going to separate you from the crowd. Because honestly, if you spent any amount of time on LinkedIn, you will recognize these immediately. 97% of the folks over there are making these mistakes. It's hurting them. They don't realize it. You can make simple, slight shifts and immediately get better results from that. So the first mistake, and again, I would call this like one of the basic strategies, right? If anyone that you talk to that works with LinkedIn training or a coach in the LinkedIn space, they're going to talk about this. The terminology we use is a profile funnel, turning your profile into a sales funnel so that it works for you. The mistake is that most people take a resume approach. They say, okay, I'm going to set up on LinkedIn. They ask me questions. It looks like a resume. I'm going to fill it in and say, this is what I did. This is my work background. It's all about you. And that's pretty natural to do because LinkedIn is asking you questions like that. And the problem is it doesn't connect with the people that you can make the biggest impact for. Your transformation as a coach, transformational work, is not going to reach them if they don't see themselves in your profile. So what we talk about is actually making the profile about them, about what they care about, and reaching out to them in the conversation that's already going on in their head. If you can enter that conversation there, they will then converse with you and you can lead them to this transformation that you can make. To give you an example, these are a couple screenshots. They're a couple years old, but you can see because it says May and June in here. But the reason why I wanted to show you these and why this is relevant with the 4 gears of marketing is that when you start doing conversational outreach, the first gear of marketing that I showed you a few moments ago, the first thing that people do, like you reach out to them, you're on their radar all of a sudden. Like they see your name, your avatar, like they're aware of you when they weren't 5 minutes before. The first thing that most people do, I bet you've done this too, is you go check out, who is this person? Like who are they? What do they do? What's their story? And what you're seeing in these graphs is the start of when someone begins the conversational outreach, and it basically amplifies or turns the volume up on your profile, your profile funnel. People start entering the top of that funnel because they're doing the research. You didn't push them to go there. You didn't have to entice them. You just started a conversation and they're kind of checking you out. So we want to take advantage. And the truth test that we use in this place, in this part of the process, is you have a great profile funnel if people start saying, so how do you do that? Like, can you tell me a little bit more? Or they say, I looked at your profile and I knew we should be talking, right? In all those cases, it's about them wanting to understand more. It's not so much about you and your story and your work history and all the great things you do. You have to meet them where they're at first. The next mistake, and you guys, I'm sure you recognize this, especially if you're active on LinkedIn now, it's the leg humper approach. It is receiving marketing messages in your inbox from people that you don't know, and they're using platforms, they're using automation to deliver this, but it's very impersonal and it doesn't feel good. I don't like being in somebody else's marketing process. I doubt you do either. It feels like they're treating you as a number and not as a person, that it's just a transaction to them. And transactions, it's part of the business world that we're in, but we want to, my assumption about you is that you're doing transformational work. Like you want to make an impact. So it's really hard to treat people as a number. And literally it's automation because they're thinking, I'm going to put 1,000 people in the top of this funnel and the funnel is going to spit out 3 clients at the bottom. And if I have 3 clients this month, life is going to be great. I'm going to take my family on vacation. Like that is the thought process. What they haven't factored into this is that outside of those 3 clients, that first of all, those 3 clients are so not discerning, like not ideal clients, because they'll basically work with anyone if they come through a marketing process like this. That's one thing. They're not great clients, but you've also pissed off probably over 950 of the other people who made a mental note and said, this person did not care about me enough as a person to actually respect who I am. They treated me as a number. So they made a mental note, when I see this person's name again, let's run the other way. Let's avoid this person. They don't respect me. That's not the impact that you want to make. And people don't, this is the downside that they don't realize. They're thinking about a marketing process from their perspective. I need to get clients, but they're not thinking about this unintended impact. And another thing people don't realize about the automation is it's actually prohibited. This is LinkedIn's documentation. Now, I hear some people out there saying, well, wait a minute. I'm on a platform. I'm running automation now. They've told me it's okay. They've showed me every way, like how they're doing this. They follow the LinkedIn rules. These are the LinkedIn rules I'm showing you. And LinkedIn knows when you're using these other platforms. They could, because they're browser extensions and things like, they can see the pattern of activity and they are cracking down on people, probably not consistently. And that's why there's still some of these companies out there running. You just the risk is not worth the reward, be aware of this. By the way, it says 2 months ago. It's over a year ago that this is not a recent rule. It's just a screenshot that I happen to have, but it was November of, 18 months ago, I guess, something like that.
Hey, Tobin.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in here? We had a great question from Leslie on that point. She asked, are you referring to chatbots or something else?
So I haven't used Tapbox. There's a whole bunch of these companies, and usually what they do is they're working with the LinkedIn API. They're able to pull information in through your inbox, and they'll allow you. Think of it like MailChimp, but for your LinkedIn messages.
Got it.
They will help you connect with people, and they will help you send messages, and they'll let you fill in personalized information like the person's first name or maybe their company. Or I see that you and I are both connected to Mark Mawhinney, and it's actually insert common connection here, and so it's personalized in that sense. But as sophisticated buyers, which we had become, a lot of us have become online because we're making more purchases online. We can smell this stuff out, like we can smell it coming. So people know when they're in one of these processes, and LinkedIn knows it's a bad user experience, and that's why they're cracking down.
Great. Well, hopefully that helps, Leslie, and thanks. Jean had mentioned a few things like DocSoup and business-to-business solutions, Octopus, and so on. So thank you for that as well. Okay. Sorry about that, Tobin. I just thought it was important.
No, great questions. I don't want to get into, again, I'm not going to knock anyone else's business. They're doing the best they can. I will tell you, I've made this mistake. A couple of years ago, we were testing automation because my background actually came from marketing automation. Like that's what I learned first. And then it's like I was playing for the bad guys and I realized it and I left that team and joined the good guys, the white hats. That's kind of how I feel about this. And so I've run automation platforms a couple of years ago. What I can tell you is, having seen the responses, it doesn't feel good for the people on the other end. And I don't like it when people do it to me. And that's why we're 100% human powered. I would call it human powered automation because we have a great process. It's just not push a button and send out spam messages to people, especially when those messages can break, like the technology can break.
Agreed.
The next thing, and this is where we get sort of into intermediate strategies, because I'm going to share something that a lot of people may not realize. This is true I'm talking about LinkedIn now, but it's actually true on Facebook and other social media platforms. If you are using a tool like Buffer or Hootsuite or something where a content calendar that lets you auto post to your profiles, you're actually getting a fraction of the engagement that you could. We stopped doing this a year or two ago because we saw our reach plummeting. And the minute that we started just directly like going on LinkedIn and posting something, now I still have a plan and I know what I want to do, but I'm not using one of these other platforms to auto post to it. I'm actually just physically going on Facebook, going on LinkedIn, and posting. The engagement numbers were substantially higher, right? So you can't create distance between you and the people you want to talk to. And this is also true, for example, if you're sharing links. The minute LinkedIn, when you share a link, let's say your YouTube video or a blog post on LinkedIn, they read that as, okay, this person is trying to steal LinkedIn users away from our platform and take them somewhere else. So let's not show this to as many people because it does not serve our interests. That is the algorithm, the math formula that's running in the background. So what we do, and again, I can share some examples with people who are interested in this part of the topic. We actually ask questions. Like, we create content that is specifically designed to create dialogue because it's the dialogue that drives sales and builds deeper relationships. So it's all about creating content that is conversational, or what they call dialogue marketing, instead of curating content. I used to run newsletters as part of our social media agency. We curated a ton and we were really good at that. But the curation playbook is not the right one unless you're going to share information. You found a really great article or resource and you talk about it conversationally and you say to someone, if you're interested in this, let me know and I'll get you that link. That will create engagement on LinkedIn or Facebook. But if you just share the link, you're actually hurting your reach. The next thing is mistake number 4 is what I call the search approach. A lot of people talk about, do I need Sales Navigator? Is it worth spending the $80 a month, $90 a month, whatever it is? I actually don't use it any longer. I got at it. We tested it for a while. Search Navigator is a paid level of LinkedIn that gives you additional search fields and the ability to see more information about the people you're trying to connect with. But let me tell you an alternative. Let's say that you're in the I'll say the digital marketing space. So Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, is like one of the big names, as an example, right? What if you just go and find a Gary V post and you see there's over 200 comments down below? Those are people that are interested in that topic. You can actually go down through, hover over those people's names on LinkedIn. This is one of the great things about LinkedIn, is you get so much intel about who that person is. And you can actually go down through. I'm not saying spam people in the comments. I'm just saying, look at who they are. Does it make sense for you to try to connect with this person? Do they match up with the type of people that you work with? Do they look like the kind of clients that you work with? Maybe you work in a coaching space and you can do the same thing, personal development, life coaching space. You could go to a Tony Robbins or a David Bayer or somebody like that that's preeminent in that space. And again, getting a ton of engagement, and you can get to know their audience, because there may be some people there that are not ready to work with Tony. He's expensive, but they need some help to sort of build in that direction, and you might be the perfect solution. So I'm much more interested in using what they call congregation pools. I think that's a Mike Michalowicz term, but where people congregate instead of trying to use search engines to find people. LinkedIn is a big search engine, but I very rarely search these days. I don't have to, because I have a steady flow coming in doing this this congregation pool approach. And then the 5th mistake that we see, I think this is maybe more common if you've been around LinkedIn at all, but we see people using this dating analogy. They try to go too fast, too much too fast, and they immediately land in your inbox with a really long message, and there's a link at the end, and they're saying, hey, let's book a time. And you're thinking to yourself, why? Like, why would I, like, for what reason would I take a chunk of my time out of my day? And I don't have enough time as it is to do a 15-minute or a 30-minute call. For what purpose? Because you want to sell me something. Like, this is literally the person that's in their mindset. They want to get results. They want to go home. They want to go back to the hotel on the first date. And you're not going to get married on the second date either. We're talking about building real relationships. And there is a process. I'll actually show you how we do this in a moment. But people have short shrifted this real relationship building, having a real network, and they don't have to do it because it's much more effective. They don't realize that. And people are, I think, because there's a lot of automation and a lot of funnels and a lot of marketing out there, this is how you can really connect with people, is to treat them like one of your friends. If one of your friends came forward and said, who do you know that could help me with this? You would sort of guide them through the process. You look out for their best interests. And that's exactly how we want to treat these new folks that we're building relationships with. All right, so here are, these are actually 4, I call them secrets. They're only secret rules in the sense that I pulled each of these out of our paid training. So this is part of what we do at SalesMap. This is part of what I do in the workshop that I'll be talking about in a few moments. These are some examples, but they're short rules, like easy to remember, and then I'll give you some actual examples of how we do this. The first one is, you actually can start conversations with people before you ever connect to them. And people are like, what? You can do that? Yeah, you can actually meet people in really cool groups like the Coaching Jungle, and you can talk to them in the comments and exchange replies back and forth, and then send a friend request, or on LinkedIn, a connection request. And those connection requests get accepted like 80 to 90% of the time, because you already oh, I know this person. And I've already exchanged a few back and forths with them. You're on their radar. Your name is familiar to them. A lot of people, going back to this leg humper automation, dating analogy that I just shared, what they're trying to do is they'll say, I'm going to send out a ton of connection requests, and then the small percentage of people that actually accept those, then I'll strike up a conversation with them. but they don't know who you are. They don't know what your intentions are. They don't really care yet. But you can reverse that process just by starting a conversation before you even reach out directly for that connection. And one of the case studies I'm going to share with you in a moment is actually going to sort of illustrate the difference on point number one here. The second thing that we teach our people to do is to make the messages 100% personalized. Like the test on this is they know without a doubt that the message that you do send to them, whether it's in the comments or part of your connection message or a follow-up message, they know 100% it was for them and it was not for anybody else. You've got to mention things specifically in there, not I read through the profile and it says you work at this company, not something that anybody, but something that really shows your attention to detail, that you actually want to get to know this person. This takes a little bit of time. This is what we do as part of our training. We teach people how to do this in a really intelligent, elegant, and efficient way, but it means that scripts don't work because they can smell the scripts coming a mile away. You can't use copy and paste messages and just fill in this part and think that you're going to build real relationships, because there's no heart in it, right? People can feel that difference. The third thing is that we find the awesome in the person that we want to connect with, not the flaws. Now, let me give you an example. If the first time I connected with Mark Mawhinney, you guys mentioned, Mark mentioned as we got started here that he and I connected through this exact same process. If the first thing I said to Mark was, "Hey, Mark, I saw your post. You have a typo in the headline. How do you think you would have felt about me?" I might have thought I was, and this is a mistake that a lot of us have made. I've done this more often than I even want to admit, where you come in and you think you're being helpful, you're sharing something, but it kind of embarrasses the other person, especially if you do it publicly. And it also doesn't make them feel good. It's not a great first impression. On the flip side, you can look, and this is a great life skill, by the way. This will make your family happier, your friends happier, and your work is going to flourish as well. If you can learn to find the awesome in other people, it will light your world on fire. In the example, instead of talking about a typo that might or might not have helped Mark, I could say, Mark, I see what you're doing. We love to be validated, by the way. And somebody said in the comments this week, they said, "I don't know how to do this." And this is an example of how you could do this. This is what I would do if I was meeting Mark for the first time. I'd say, "Mark, I'm following what you're doing, and I'm really impressed because you are a true community builder. I love what you've done in the community, in the coaching jungle, because, I mean, seriously, look at what he's done here. He's gathered a big group of people who are changing the world. That's impressive by itself. He has not made the group about himself. He shares the spotlight exactly the way he's doing with me today, and I appreciate him for that. And he consistently, day after day, he and the whole community that he's built, they show up with value. So everyone is growing from that experience. That is awesome. And it's worth saying that to a person, finding that awesome in them. And I believe that if you can lead into your relationships like that, you are at least going to make a better first impression. It doesn't mean that they're going to love you and buy from you, and that, it's not a manipulative strategy. It's just leading with the right kind of approach to build a warm relationship or a warm reception to start. And it's a great life skill. And then lastly, ask permission first. We do this, we teach this in a couple different ways, but we constantly check in with the person on the other end and say, "Hey, I have this thing. I think this might be useful for you. I'd love to share it. Is that okay?" Don't drop links on people. What I mean by that is, if you're sending a message to someone, just like you don't put the link in your posts on LinkedIn because it will actually limit your reach, you can actually do the same thing in the inbox, in your messaging to people. You can say, "Hey, I have this article. You mentioned this thing in your post, and I wrote about something similar, and the two kind of go together. Would you like to see what I shared?" And let them say, "Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to know what you're doing." Or they'd say, "No, I don't have time for that." Either way, they get to choose. And that respect of asking them first it's a micro commitment. It builds a relationship instead of taking away. But don't share a link with anyone that hasn't already said, "Yes, I want that from you." Ask for permission first. So I know they're like simple rules, like everyone's looking for the magic script, but there isn't one. And if I gave you a magic script of what worked, a year ago or 3 months ago, it wouldn't work today because the world is changing around us. But these rules are timeless because they're based on psychology, not technology, right? So they're always going to work if you treat people the right way. They remember how they feel, how you made them feel. So a couple of questions that often come up. This one was asked this week a couple times, actually. I wanted to make sure we hit it here in the group. How do I get results specifically on LinkedIn without having to spend my whole day on LinkedIn? I hear you. I don't have that luxury either. It's actually not effective to spend your whole day on LinkedIn or even on social media. I think it's not only doesn't produce the results, it's detrimental. Even with the sales teams that we're building, we want, even if someone is doing it essentially in a full-time role, we want them to do outreach max 3 to 4 hours a day, because you are bringing energy to these conversations. If you start treating people like numbers, you're going to get low number results. So the range that I look at is 30 minutes a day to, if you really have to build your business, like if you really have to fill your pipeline, you're starting from scratch and you don't have any people and you need a full pipeline, maybe 3 hours a day for a short period of time, couple of weeks to really fill that pipeline. The reason why a full pipeline matters is because it takes all the pressure off your conversations. You don't get, I'm struggling for the word, but you're not desperate when you enter you're not trying to make something happen that shouldn't happen. If you have a full pipeline, you meet people, you build a real relationship. If they're not a fit, you're okay with that because there's someone behind them coming along who could be a better fit. But the general rule that I use for myself, I book an hour a day. And just like you, I have days where I'm thinking to myself, I don't have time for this. I've got a ton of stuff to do today. So I have an Apple Watch. I set a timer on my watch for 30 minutes. And then I put my head down and I say, I'm going to do this at least for 30 minutes. So I'm constantly building relationships. I'm reaching out to people, sometimes new people, and sometimes I'm looping back to folks that I've talked to before so that I can stay top of mind. I'm not pushing send like an easy button and blasting a ton of people and thinking that's going to do anything for me. I'm reaching out to them and checking in with them. Hey, what's going on? Last time I talked with you, you were doing this. How did that go? How did the launch go? Did it produce the results you were looking for? And I have those notes in my CRM. It's a real relationship. I'm treating them the same way I would family and friends. The other question, this is like a generic question. This won't work for me because my people aren't on LinkedIn. Well, if they're in the business world, they probably are. They might not be super active on LinkedIn. They might not be going on LinkedIn every single day. Like some of us who work in the online space, I include myself in this group. I go to LinkedIn every single day. I'm checking in and I really pay attention to that channel because it produces a lot of results for us. Not everyone, like if you're in a bricks and mortar business or if you're seeing patients every single day, you might check in LinkedIn once a week because that's, for an hour, that's all the time you have for that. But LinkedIn is super valuable because it has this full dossier. It's like someone gave you a research file on the person that you want to connect with. So maybe they're more active on Facebook. Maybe you have to use email to actually converse with them. But LinkedIn is an essential strategy just because of all the information there. So even if they're not there, you still want to leverage this. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table. The second big question that we hear from folks is, I don't know what to say. Like I wouldn't even know where to start, especially if you're not going to give me a script and say this first and then say this second, or, they want the cookie cutter approach. Again, I don't believe scripts are nearly as effective as having a framework or a flow. Start here, do this first, enter the other person's world with an intention of meeting them and finding the awesome in them. That is a first step. It's a great way to start a relationship. Like if you're in the comments, remember I gave you the example of Gary Vee or Tony Robbins. Like if someone says something really awesome, makes a great comment, they share something that, like, tell them it's awesome. And don't just say that's awesome. Say, I love that you shared that because, and then fill in after that in a way that's very personal to you. And 100% they know that's about them and the impact they made on you. And they feel really good about that because they also probably want to transform and make this a better world. All right. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I've covered everything. Here's what I have for you guys. If this approach interests you, the thing that I'm doing next week is a client in a day workshop. This is something, again, most of my work is with SalesMap. If you're interested in sales teams and bringing on folks that can prospect and bring deals to the table for you, that's what we do at SalesMap. I think I have the URL coming up in a minute, but it's salesmap.me, not .com. But what I'm doing next week is a side project that I have going. And honestly, between you and I do it because I love it. This is something that I get really nerdy about this. The work is capitalized in this word for a specific purpose. It is a 6-hour workshop, and someone out there just groaned and said, "Oh my God, I would never sit there for 6 hours." You're right. You won't sit there for 6 hours. I sit there for 6 hours on Zoom in a virtual room. What we do is we share a bunch of information ahead of time, what I call a web kit, and then we work for 6 hours. And so people get all the tools that they need. And if they get stuck with something, I'm there on Zoom and they can check in and say, "Hey, I just sent this message and I didn't get the response I thought I was going to get. How can we adjust that?" That's what it's like a hackathon approach to this conversational outreach. And I just call it a client in a day workshop. Okay, I have a couple. These are like social proof, because this is like the thing you're supposed to do is share. Yes, I have worked with clients. They've gotten good results. But what I actually want to tell you guys is a couple case studies that I thought would be most relevant. People have done the client in a day workshop experience, not SalesMap clients where they get me, but in the process, but they also get my partners. And like, that's a much bigger project, and it's not the fit for everyone. With the client in a day workshop, I started working with Yon. Yon is a website developer. He's actually from Bulgaria. And when he first approached me, he had been selling websites. Now, if you know anything about space, websites are tough because they've become a commodity. Like, he was selling, I don't want to be specific with the numbers, but websites for several $1,000s to English as a second language schools. That was his market at the time. He said, "Look, I know what I do. I could earn more money. I have 4 or 5 developers working with me. I want to grow my business." He's a young guy. He's very ambitious, but he's competing in a world where people can pay, $20 or $25 a month and get Wix or Squarespace and get a nice looking website. And so he said, I don't know how to grow this. And by the way, Yon approached me when he first messaged me. He sent me one of those leg humper automated emails. He was doing exactly what I told you. He was sending messages to people automated and saying, if they connect, then I pick up and try to have a real conversation with him. So my first read through, I was kind of turned off, like you would be as well. I could see what he was doing, but I also saw some potential in him. And I said, I'd love to talk with you because I see what you're doing. And I really like this part. That was finding the awesome. We should chat about this because I see what you're trying to accomplish. And I think with a couple shifts in what you're doing, you're going to get better results. Well, the better results were that Yon was getting less than 10% of people that would actually, less than 1 out of 10 people would actually converse with him because of that process that most people are using over on LinkedIn. People who are trying to get clients. Obviously, if you're trying to get a job, that's a different conversation. But people are trying to get clients. If you spend time there, you're getting these messages too. People are spamming you, trying to sell you something, and it's a real turnoff. And I talked with Yon. He came into the workshop and he said, "I want to work with life coaches, personal development coaches, because I love that space. I love growing myself. This is the group of people." And I said, "Okay, let's test this market. How can we accelerate our learning? How can we put an offer together and accelerate that process to validate it and make sure it's the right one or not?" The first week after the workshop, he went out and booked 8 conversations where he actually followed the steps of the process to got on the phone, talk to real people. It is not market research. There are people out there that teach market research programs. That's not what this is about, because I believe people, they vote with their wallets. Like, they tell you what they really want. They'll tell you what they want to buy. And if it matches up with what you do, you sell it to them. It's a pretty basic process. Well, this is what Yon did. And what he learned from those conversations was, yeah, there are personal development and life coaches who need websites, but a lot of times they do use those lower cost tools. Like, that's sufficient for what they need. But what we also learned, and what people really appreciate about Yon, is he is a developer. He's not just a website builder, like a graphic artist. He's a developer. He can write code. He has a whole team that can build web apps. They can build chatbots, and they can build lead generation platforms that are far more valuable than just a simple branded website. So long story short, he enrolled a client within the first week, maybe 10 days, something like that, in that first range of time. And that line of business, that one small project, I would estimate from talking with Yon that this is probably going to end up being a $250,000 of a new line of business for him. Not from one project, but because of the door that he opened on this specific project. I have a little insight into that. I don't want to get into the specifics, but it is going to be a big opportunity, and he never would have found this without the conversations. I do have a couple other case studies. We can talk about more examples, but I want to give you guys, so client in a day workshop, it's less than $1,000. There's no sales, there's no pitch here. If you want to see what the details, I'd love to chat with you. I'll ask you a couple questions. If we think it's a fit, I'll share the details. It's really simple. This is what I do. I converse with people. I don't send them to pages and try to beat them up with headlines. And this isn't a ploy to get someone on the phone. Literally, I'll just chat with you. If it makes sense, I'll share the details. If it doesn't make sense, I'll tell you that up front and share what I know that might serve you more. These are the best ways to get in touch with me, right? You can tag me in the Coaching Jungle. I'm active in there too. I'll answer you. I promise, because that's what I do. I chat with people, right? You can find me on LinkedIn if you prefer that. Actually can show you a couple things that you might find really interesting, because you guys, what a lot of the folks in the Coaching Jungle, you guys are experts in your space. So the work that you do is very much in alignment with what we do as well. So we have some things coming down the road that you're going to want to know about, specifically for LinkedIn. I'm also active on Facebook. Happy to chat with you there if you prefer, or you can just email me directly. And this was what I was telling you. It's salesmap.me, not .com. Mark, that's kind of how we doing in the chat. I haven't been over to listen.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions. Rivers just asked if that was US or Canadian.
Which number? Oh, the less than $1,000. I'm in the US. So yes, it's less than $1,000, but it's US currency.
Got it. And actually, Rivers had another question, which I promised to get back to, and I'm just trying to find it. We had a lot of chatter which is great. I'm glad to see a lot of conversation in the chat box. Geez, I hope I can find it here, Rivers. Let's see. I'm going to keep looking here.
Or Rivers, pop it in there again if it's top of mind. If you can find it easier, maybe that will help, Mark. The one thing I'll let folks know, what I'm not doing, just to be upfront with you, and the workshop is this week before, what I call the web kit, week before kit of resources, playbooks that I use, and we do the workshop, and then I make a promise in this workshop of what I will do to help you get your client enrolled. That's what the process there. It is not what we do in SalesMap. SalesMap is a different animal. It's a 25K offer. It's folks that are already doing 6 figures or multi 6 figures and they want to go to 7. It's a different process. So I just want to be clear with folks. I'm not trying to tell you that you're going to get the SalesMap experience for less than $1,000, because it doesn't work quite that way. But if you're in the right place where you do want to go get several clients and that makes a significant difference in your business, you maybe want to launch a new program. That would be, or you've already got programs out there, but you've been doing one-to-one work and you want to test the waters on a group program. This is the process. I don't think there's a better process, not only because it's the best skill set, but for the time that we're in. Again, think back to that uncertainty and this sort of this is how you find out what people want to buy. They'll tell you, and then you get to decide whether it matches up with what you want to sell.
Got it. Now, I will mention, lastly, you had groceries being delivered during, I think, points 3 and 4. So the replay is going to be shared in the Coaching Jungle. It's going to be put in as an announcement or a pinned post at the top of the group. So if you aren't in the group, feel free to shoot me a message or Tobin, and we can get you that replay. That's probably the best way for you to hear points 3 and 4 in there. But definitely let us know. The replay will be going out. Let's see. Rivers said his question was about organization in LinkedIn, which doesn't jog anything for me here, Rivers, so you got to bear with me looking through. Any other questions too, guys? Pop them in there as we're going through.
He might be asking about CRMs and sort of organizing the process. I don't know. I'm kind of making an assumption there, but that is not specifically the topic of what we do in the workshop. Obviously, we do have a framework or flow, but that's a bigger discussion and not the pointed focus. I mean, here's the deal with the workshop. This is why we're doing it. It solves a big, hard problem, and that is, how do you get your first few sales, maybe your first few clients, if you're shifting into a new space or you're launching a new program. That is a hard problem that a lot of people struggle with, and sometimes it can take years to work out. And I know that because I've felt that pain. So that's specifically what this workshop will do. We do it faster and with more certainty because we're actually having the conversations, and we're able to accelerate the learning cycles, and we're doing it at a reduced cost, which, at least for me and what the work that I do, this is most of my calendar and time is focused on this team, this engine that we're running at SalesMap. And I'm happy to have those discussions. If someone out there is in that world, we can talk about that too. But specifically, I came today to talk about this workshop next week.
And Maylene had asked a couple of things. She wasn't sure how to convert business people, and also how many times to post on LinkedIn, I'm guessing per day. My suggestion, Maylene, would be to book a call with Tobin. You could probably tell from what you've heard here today that it's not one of those icky sales call, high pressure type things. And he's a great guy to connect with anyways. So if the workshop's not for you, then at least you've made a good connection and somebody in your world. But I'd recommend that you book a call with him for sure. Leslie had said, so the key to conversational outreach could be asking a thoughtful question, something that will cause them to stop and comment. Any thoughts on that, Tobin?
Yes. So using curiosity is a great tool. We just have to be intelligent about how we do it. And what I mean by that is, so imagine you were rushing around on a really busy day, and someone said, so why did you get into this coaching business anyways? Internally in our head, we're thinking, I don't have time to answer that. Like, why are you asking me this question right now? If we were stuck on an elevator and the elevator broke down and we had 45 minutes to sit there and wait until someone came to fix it, I could answer that for you, but I can't do that today because I've got a ton of other things. So curiosity, yes, but how you structure it, you have to enter that conversation in a way that makes sense for the person on the other end. Yeah. What's in it for them, and why should they care?
And what you just said, that's like my inner voice, because I get those messages with a very open-ended, so Mark, why did you become a coach? Or what do you do? Or something like that. And it's like, oh God, I really can't spend all day going back and forth on this. So you just said what I'm thinking often.
Yeah, well, I think we all do. And here's the truth. You can research someone and answer a lot of that with a couple minutes of research. So do the work. Like, be willing to do the work, because that's a real relationship, not a lazy way of doing it.
Got it. I hope I got all the questions, because you answered a lot of them during the presentation, and then we caught Rivers said that you answered his question. So that's great. And I'm looking through, geez, I hope I didn't miss any here, guys, but we got a lot of discussion in the box. So
yeah, I mean, I don't mind if you've got a couple minutes. I don't mind hanging if there's a good question. The one thing I do want to sort of redirect a little bit, you'll have to help me with the name, Mark, but you mentioned someone asked about, or you had made the suggestion of getting on the call. So folks, my intention is not to book a bunch of calls with you guys. Like, that's not the goal here. I mean, if there's something that you really need and we need to talk through it and get on the phone, but this is not a ploy to get you to book a sales call so I can pitch you on something. Here's what's going to happen. Message me. I'll follow up with you. I'll ask you a couple of questions because I genuinely want to understand, can I help you? Like, my promise to you is I'm in it with you to get these results. And if I can deliver on that promise, I'll tell you that up front, and we'll do it in chat. And if I can't do that, if I can't deliver on that result because my name's on it, I'm going to tell you that too, and I'm going to be honest with you. And if we have to get on the phone, I'll do that, but I'm going to make sure that it's worth your time and worth my time, because I don't have a lot of extra time for those. Like, again, most of my calendar is booked up with folks going into the SalesMap program. So this is really about getting you the information and the answers. Like, if you're wondering about, posting on LinkedIn or whatever, you should know if you post too much on LinkedIn, it actually works against you. So yes, there's an algorithm for that, and this stuff changes all the time. We can chat about that. I don't mind sharing a little bit of information, but I'm looking for the way to make the biggest impact for you guys. And that's what I put together in this workshop.
Awesome. Shem had asked a question. He said, how long do you converse before calling potential clients?
Yep. It depends on the person on the other end. A dialogue requires two sides. And I have worked this process and enrolled clients in as short as 72 hours, I think was one of the shortest ones, from never met this person to, entering and working through the process. And all of a sudden they're enrolling, by the way, not into the workshop, into the 25K sales map program. That's how fast it can work, even for big high ticket transactions. Or sometimes it can take 6 or 9 months because I built a relationship with someone. The timing was not right, but we both value the relationship, and I loop back periodically and just check in and see what is going on in my world that I might be able to share that would be useful. And more importantly, what's going on in their world so that I can stay up to date with them. We do it with our family. We do it with our friends. We should do the same thing with these relationships, because your network is your lifeline going forward. Like a robust network, a full pipeline, you will never go hungry. That is the big idea of the workshop. Never go hungry again.
Got it. And Shem had asked how many emails. I assume that's follow-up messages or emails.
So there is not a specific number. I'm actually here's my backstory. I used to be an email marketer, a list builder, and an audience builder. So I used to build those email nurture sequences, send 3 or 4 emails, and first email is this, second. I don't do that anymore. I don't do that because 1 or 2 out of 10 people are even reading them. The open rates are dismal, and honestly, it felt like I was a kick in the gut to do all that work and not get any results. So the emails that I'm sending now look very much like the same kind of exchanges that I have on Facebook, on chat, SMS, like text messages, or on LinkedIn. Short, staccato, conversational, expecting a response from the person on the other end, because I want a dialogue. And if there's no dialogue there, I'm not going to keep messaging them. It's the dialogue that drives the sales, not the copywriting or the positioning.
That's great. So any final words there, Tobin, before we sign off?
No, I just, if this speaks to you, great. I hope you got value out of what we shared. That was my intention, because again, I've gone through and sat through a lot of webinars. So I wanted to deliver what I look for when I do that. If you're interested in the workshop, my promise is that I'm in it with you to get results. And I take that seriously. So that's why I want to chat with people. I'm not sharing a page for anyone to go sign up, because if I don't know you and I don't know if I can get you results, you're not getting in, because I'm on the hook as much as you are. So that's just the way I choose to do my business. I don't have to do this. I want to do this.
No, that's great. Well, thanks, Tobin, and thanks everyone for tuning in here. I hope you got a lot from this. I hope everyone has a great weekend as well. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Mark, I meant every word I said about you. I really respect what you've built, but more importantly, how you do it. And I think there's a lot for all of us to learn from you. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, Tobin. All right, guys, thanks again, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.